This tutorial is about noise monitoring with an adjustable peak, hold and decay RGB LED display. In parallel, we are transmitting decibel data to Adafruit IO with Wi-Fi and MQTT as modes of transport. In the description below the video, you will find a link to a GitHub repository that includes a wiring schematic, the bill of materials, and the code with detailed comments. The technical setup is fairly straightforward, and the magic happens as always in the code. Once you understood how and why it works like it does, you can easily swap in larger LED rings or strips. Only a few parts are needed to put it all together. A special component in this setup is an analog sound level meter with ICs that do all the heavy math for you. It outputs an analog voltage representing 30 to 130 decibels. For most parts, apart from the sound level meter, you can find cheaper substitutes online. The wiring of this setup is straightforward. If you are using a ring or a strip with more LEDs, you may need a PSU with a higher current output, because each LED consumes 60 mA when lit at maximum brightness. Let's see the whole thing in action. We are monitoring the noise at Clapham North, London Underground Station. But before we do that, let's look at the peak, hold and decay principle, so that later you thoroughly understand what the code does and how that relates to what you hear and see. So, every loop iteration, what we have to do is to check if a new peak value has occurred and at what time it did. Then we set the peak hold LED to its maximum brightness and to a position that matches the peak value. While no higher peak value occurs, we keep the peak hold LED at both maximum brightness and at its current position for a certain time. However, once the peak hold interval is over, we let the peak hold LED decay back towards position 0 every few milliseconds, while dimming it until it goes out. All the time, a new peak can interrupt the peak hold or decay interval, and we start the whole process all over again. During the next 2 minutes, you can see the peak hold and decay effect most clearly, where a quiet period follows a noisy one. Depending on the minimum and maximum noise in the location you are monitoring, you should adjust the right and left potentiometers so that the full range of LEDs is used at all times. Finally, let's briefly go through the code, but as mentioned before, in the description below the video, you will find a link to a GitHub repository with a code and many detailed comments. And now it's your turn. Thank you for watching and listening.